This video is about tales of courage from the German front lines. Subscribe for more. In the early morning mist of 1944, the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and gunpowder. The remnants of World War II were etched across the landscape of war-torn Germany, where the thunder of artillery echoed against crumbling buildings, and the cries of soldiers and civilians reverberated in the distance. Among the ruins of a village near the Rhine, the German soldier, Corporal Anton Richter, emerged from the shadows of an abandoned bakery. His uniform, once crisp with the insignia of the Wehrmacht, was now tattered and stained, a testament to the relentless battles he had fought. Anton had joined the army out of a sense of duty, a fervent belief in the ideals that had swept across his nation. But as the war dragged on, he began to question the righteousness of their cause. The idealism of youth had given way to the stark reality of survival. On this fateful morning, Anton found himself amidst a growing conflict that pitted not only nations against each other, but also the very fabric of humanity against itself. As he peered through the jagged openings of the bakery, Anton observed a group of American soldiers moving cautiously through the village, their helmets glinting under the weak sunlight. They were a mixture of veterans and fresh recruits, their faces carved with determination and fear. Among them was Sergeant James Donovan, a seasoned fighter whose reputation for bravery preceded him. He was tasked with leading his men into enemy territory to secure vital intelligence on the German forces' movements. The tension was palpable. Anton's heart raced as he considered the possibility of having to confront these men. He had fought alongside brothers who were now lost, friends who had sacrificed everything. But now, they were on opposing sides, caught in a web of politics and power that neither of them fully understood. He turned to his comrade, Private Klaus Schneider, who had been by his side since the beginning of the war. Klaus's youthful face bore the marks of innocence, and Anton feared for him more than he feared for himself. "We can let them take this village, Anton," Klaus urged, his voice a whisper that trembled with fear. "If they find the supplies hidden here, we could lose everything." Anton nodded, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. He understood the stakes. The Americans had begun to push deeper into German territory, and their advance threatened to turn the tide of war. The supplies in the village were crucial for the German front, a cache of arms and ammunition that could bolster their dwindling forces. The thought of it falling into enemy hands ignited a fire within him. Meanwhile, Sergeant Donovan gathered his men, issuing orders with the authority born from experience. "Listen up. We've received intel that suggests there are German forces entrenched in this village. We move swiftly, take them by surprise, and secure any ammunition we can find. We can afford to let the Nazis regroup." As the soldiers moved forward, the landscape shifted dramatically. The village was a haunting shell of its former self, buildings reduced to rubble, a silent witness to the horrors of war. Donovan's squad advanced cautiously, navigating the debris with the agility of men who had learned to adapt to chaos. With every step, they could feel the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes watching them, those of civilians who had endured the onslaught, and those of enemy combatants waiting to strike. The confrontation was inevitable. Anton signaled to Klaus, and they crouched behind a wall, hearts pounding in synchrony. "Can we trust them to be honorable?" Klaus whispered. Anton didn't have an answer. He only knew that the ideals of bravery and honor had become muddied in the bloodshed of their reality. A sudden explosion rocked the air, followed by the sound of gunfire. The Americans hadn't moved undetected. Anton clenched his rifle, glancing at Klaus, who was pale but resolute. "We have to act now, bro," Anton shouted over the cacophony of chaos. They prepared to counterattack, aware that the fate of the village and perhaps their lives depended on their next moves. The initial clash erupted with brutal intensity. Donovan's squad engaged with the German soldiers, bullets whizzing through the air as each side fought with desperate determination. Anton's instincts kicked in, and he led Klaus forward, firing back to provide cover for their retreating comrades. The sounds of warfare, shouts, gunshots, and the cries of the wounded created a symphony of chaos that enveloped the village. Through the haze of battle, Anton spotted a glint of silver, a locket that had fallen from the neck of a fallen American soldier. For a brief moment, Tyne stood still as he regarded the photograph. Inside, a smiling woman, perhaps a wife or sweetheart, frozen in a moment of happiness. The weight of the war pressed down on him, and he realized that beyond the uniforms and orders, these soldiers were fighting for their homes, their futures, just as he was. In the midst of the gunfire, Donovan spotted Anton's position and made a split-second decision. He gestured for his men to flank the German position, aiming to encircle them. The calculated maneuver brought the Americans closer, and Anton felt the pulse of danger quicken. He knew that if Donovan succeeded, they would be trapped. Fall back. We need to regroup. Anton shouted to Klaus, but it was too late. The Americans pressed forward, and the clash escalated. Smoke filled their lungs, and the sharp sting of adrenaline surged in their veins. Men began to fall, and the horror of war enveloped them both. But one soldier's desperate cry pierced through the din. "Medic, we need a medic." Anton's heart sank as he recognized the voice belonging to one of the Americans he had just exchanged fire with. The realization that he could help him could save a life clashed violently with his instincts to protect his own. In that moment of uncertainty, Anton felt the weight of the world upon his shoulders. Was he a soldier first, or was he a man capable of compassion? The battle raged around him, but within, a conflict of a different kind unfolded, one that pitted his humanity against the brutal demands of war. The fighting grew more chaotic, and Anton made his choice. He yelled over the gunfire, directing Klaus to follow him. Ignoring the bullets flying overhead, they dashed toward the fallen soldier, a sense of urgency guiding their every step. As they reached him, Anton's heart raced. He recognized the soldier as faced the man he had seen in the bakery only moments before. It was Donovan. The sergeant lay on the ground, clutching his side, blood seeping through his fingers. "Help me," he gasped, his voice strained with pain and desperation. Anton hesitated, torn between the instinct to fight and the urge to save. But as Klaus knelt beside him, urging him on, Anton's resolve hardened. "We'll all get you out of here," he said, forcing the words past the lump in his throat. The gunfire continued, and time seemed to stretch as they worked to staunch Donovan's bleeding. In those fleeting moments, an unexpected bond formed, a silent agreement that transcended the enmity of their roles as soldiers. But the chaos was relentless. The realization that they were exposed to enemy fire ignited a surge of adrenaline. Anton glanced at Klaus, who nodded, determination etched on his face. They couldn't stay. They had to move. With Donovan's arm draped across Anton's shoulders, they began to retreat. The sound of gunfire faded into the background, replaced by the pounding of Anton's heart and the shared breaths of desperation. They stumbled back toward the safety of the bakery, the shadows offering brief solace from the madness outside. As they approached the entrance, the cries of their comrades becoming distant echoes, Anton felt a flicker of hope. If they could get Donovan to safety, perhaps humanity would prevail, even amid the fury of war. But as they crossed the threshold, an explosion rocked the bakery, sending splinters of wood and debris flying. Anton's well chattered once more, and darkness engulfed them. As the dust settled and silence fell, a new conflict loomed on the horizon, a struggle for survival, not just against the enemy, but against the very forces that sought to extinguish the light of their shared humanity. Would Anton and Klaus rise against the tides of war, or would they be swallowed whole by the darkness that threatened to consume them all? The stakes had never been higher, and the fight for not only their lives but their souls had just begun. The question remained, in the face of unimaginable odds, would courage be enough? The air hung thick with uncertainty as they awaited the dawn of a new day on the front lines. The war was far from over, and the choices they made would echo long after the last gun had fallen silent. In the battle for their convictions and lives, Anton, Klaus, and Donovan stood on the precipice of a new reckoning that would change the very essence of what it meant to be a soldier in a world at war. And as the first rays of light broke through the remnants of destruction, the tale of courage was just beginning to unfold. Dust settled slowly, mingling with the acrid scent of smoke and burnt wood that clung to the air. Anton blinked through the haze, his heart pounding as he felt the weight of Donovan's body against him. The explosion had thrown them to the ground, and he could hear the unsteady breaths of Klaus nearby. "Are you okay?" he managed to croak out, the words heavy with concern. Klaus was already on his feet, brushing debris from his uniform. "Yes, but we need to move. They'll all come for us." "We can stay here," he insisted, his voice edged with urgency. Anton nodded, trying to shake the disorientation from his mind. "Donovan." Anton turned his focus back to the American sergeant. His face was pale, marred by pain and fear. He was still conscious, but Anton could see the toll the injuries were taking. "We need to get you out of here, but we have to hurry." Donovan grunted in agreement, but his eyes betrayed the depth of his agony. "I am not leaving my men behind," he gasped, determination fighting against the haze of pain. "You're in no position to lead, Sergeant. We'll get your men if we can, but first, you need to survive," Anton replied firmly, realizing that their survival depended on a fragile alliance born of necessity. Klaus crouched beside them, his youthful face drawn tight with fear. We can take him there. It is safer. Lead the way, Anton urged, his instincts taking over as he helped Donovan to his feet, wrapping the soldier's arm around his shoulder. They moved with painstaking slowness, every footfall heavy with the threat of discovery. With each step, the atmosphere grew thicker, the echoes of gunfire and war fading into a tense silence. As they approached the cellar door, Anton's senses heightened. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, urgency mingling with an intricate web of emotions he had yet to fully understand. He was aiding an enemy soldier, a concept that felt both foreign and profoundly human. Klaus opened the cellar door, revealing a dim, compressed space filled with the remnants of forgotten supplies. In here, he urged, glancing cautiously over his shoulder. They descended quickly, pulling Donovan down the stairs before closing the door behind them. Once inside, the darkness felt suffocating, but it was a welcome reprieve from the chaos above. The cellar walls were lined with crates, remnants of the village's former life. Anton maneuvered Donovan to an empty corner, where he could rest against the cold stone wall. "Hold on, Sergeant, we'll patch you up," Anton said, his voice steadier than he felt. He reached into his pack for the first aid supplies he had scavenged, bandages, antiseptic, anything that could be of use. Klaus knelt beside them, his hands trembling as he held the flashlight, illuminating Donovan's wound. "It is bad," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "Keep the light steady," Anton instructed, focusing on the task at hand. He could feel the weight of Klaus's gaze, and it only intensified the urgency coursing through him. Donovan winced as Anton began to clean the blood that had soaked through his shirt. "You were risking a lot for me," he murmured, his voice strained. "Because you were a soldier," Anton replied, the truth of his words surprising even him. "We may fight on opposite sides, but we were still men. We need to survive this, survival or not. I can't let my men fend for themselves. They need me," Donovan insisted, his stubbornness shining through the pain. "They want to do you any good if you bleed out here," Anton shot back, frustration mingling with understanding. A moment turned into an eternity as Anton worked. Each movement felt like a defiance against the war that sought to tear them apart. The thought of their shared humanity pushed him forward, and he could see the flicker of understanding in Donovan's eyes, a silent acknowledgement of their alliance, however temporary. As he finished bandaging the wound, footsteps echoed from above, sending a shiver of dread down his spine. The Americans might be searching for their sergeant, or worse, a German soldier's presence might now draw the attention of enemy patrols. "SHH," Anton hissed, holding a finger to his lips. Klaus's eyes widened as they both strained to listen, the sound of boots crunching gravel growing closer. "We can stay here. We need to find another way out," Klaus whispered, fear evident on his face. Anton nodded, his mind racing. "There has to be a back exit. We'll check the far side of the cellar." He glanced back at Donovan, whose face was pale, but he nodded in agreement. They needed to escape before they were trapped. Moving cautiously, they navigated the dark cellar, searching for an exit. The sound of footsteps grew fainter, but they couldn't take any chances. Finally, Anton spotted a small window high on the wall, partially obscured by rubble. He pointed, his heart racing at the thought of escape. Klaus scrambled to find a crate to boost Anton up, and with hesitation, he turned back to Donovan. "Stay low. If we can get you to that window, we can pull you through." Donovan's expression turned grim, but he didn't protest. The urgency of the moment overshadowed the injury he suffered. "Just don't leave me behind," he breathed, fear threading through his voice. "I want to," Anton promised, determination hardening his resolve as he climbed onto the crate. He could see the faint light filtering through the window, an escape from the clutches of chaos. With a final surge of strength, he reached up, pushing against the window frame. It creaked but budged, creating enough space for him to slip through. "Klaus, help him," he urged as he maneuvered his body through the opening. Klaus wasted no time helping Donovan to his feet. "Just follow my voice," Anton called out, his heart racing with anticipation. "You can do this." With painstaking effort, Klaus supported Donovan, who grimaced with every movement, but pressed on, urgency consuming them both. "I am right here, just keep going." As they climbed, the world outside grew louder, engulfing them in the residual sounds of war, the distant thuds of artillery, shouts of soldiers, the very essence of survival. Suddenly, the door to the cellar burst open, and a shadow loomed in the doorway. Anton shouted, adrenaline surging as gunfire erupted from above. Klaus dove for cover, instinctively pulling Donovan down with him as bullets ricocheted off the cellar walls. Anton felt the rush of chaos surging through him. They had to make it had to survive this onslaught. Anton yelled, pushing through the chaos, his mind a flurry of thoughts. They were pinned down to the very earth with tension and fear. He could hear the shots raining down outside, the cries of men caught in the fray. They couldn't stay here. With a swift determination, Anton climbed back through the window, urging Klaus to follow. "We have to get to the tree line," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the tumult. Klaus nodded, lifting Donovan with all the strength he could muster. They plunged into the chaos, hearts pounding against the adrenaline-fueled reality of survival. As they sprinted toward the tree line, Anton stole a glance back at the burning village, a haunting reminder of the lives that had been shattered by war. But at that moment, survival overshadowed all else, their shared humanity propelling them forward. The shadows of trees enveloped them as they reached the edge of the forest, the sounds of battle receding into the background. They paused to catch their breath, but the moment was brief. "We need to keep moving," Anton urged, glancing at Donovan's pale face. "We don't know when they'll come looking for us." Klaus nodded, fear etched across his features. "We can go back, and we'll be hunted. Then we find safety," Anton replied, determination sparking in his chest. "We'll find a way to make contact with your men. You're not going to die here. Not today." Donovan looked from Anton to Klaus, a flicker of gratitude igniting in his eyes. "Thank you for saving me," he whispered. "It is not over yet," Anton replied, his voice a mixture of hope and resolve. "This war won't define us. We'll find a way to end this madness." As they moved deeper into the forest, the realization settled in this was just the beginning of their shared journey. An alliance born from necessity, transforming into a fight for something greater than themselves, a fight for humanity amidst the ashes of war. That the road ahead was fraught with peril, and as they forged ahead, uncertainty loomed like a shadow. Each step brought them closer to danger, but also to the possibility of redemption. The pages of their story had just begun to unfold, and the choices they made would echo through the annals of history, transcending the lines drawn by nations at war. The forest was dense, the trees arching overhead like sentinels guarding secrets long buried beneath the soil. As Anton, Klaus, and Donovan pressed forward, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the rustling leaves and the distant calls of birds reclaiming their territory from the chaos. They followed a narrow path, a trail worn by both man and beast, winding deeper into the forest's embrace. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, a stark contrast to the smoke and destruction they had left behind. Anton kept a keen eye on the surroundings, his senses heightened. Each snap of a twig or rustling of leaves sent a jolt through him, nerves frayed from the tension of their escape. Klaus whispered, glancing back over his shoulder as if the shadows themselves might give chase. "Of course," Anton replied, his voice slow but resolute. "But we need to focus on getting Donovan to safety first. Once we're far enough away, we can think about next steps." Donovan leaned heavily against Klaus, his breath labored, each exhale a painful reminder of his injuries. "You don't have to do this," he murmured, a hint of defiance in his voice despite the pain. "I'll just slow you down. You need to get back to your lines." "No," Anton said, his tone firm. "You're one of us now. We'll find a way to help you." They pushed on, the forest growing darker as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Shadows stretched across the ground, and with each passing moment the weight of uncertainty bore down on them. What lay ahead was unknown, a world beyond the conflict that had consumed their lives. "Do you think there are others out there?" Klaus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anton pondered the question as they navigated through the thick underbrush, splintered branches scratching at their uniforms. "There are always others. Soldiers, civilians, all caught in this madness. We can lose sight of that." The path eventually opened into a small clearing, a patch of sunlight breaking through the canopy above. Anton halted, scanning the area for signs of danger. "Let us rest here for a moment," he suggested, gently lowering Donovan to the ground. Klaus knelt beside their new ally, his face flushed with worry. "What should we do about your wound?" Donovan grimaced, shaking his head slightly. "I'll manage, just keep an eye out." As he spoke, Anton rummaged through his pack, retrieving the remaining supplies. He tended to Donovan's wound with cautious hands, the act imbued with a sense of shared purpose. In that moment, the lines of enmity blurred, and they became united under the banner of survival. "Why did you help me?" Donovan asked, his gaze piercing through the haze of pain. Anton paused, meeting his eyes. "Because, in the end, We all human. We fight for different reasons, but we bleed the same. Klaus nodded, his youthful face lit with understanding. It doesn't matter who wears which uniform. We just trying to get through this. Donovan fell silent, absorbing their words. The bond forged in this moment was fragile yet potent, a flicker of hope in a world consumed by darkness. Listen, Anton said as he finished securing the bandage. If we rediscover, it won't just be the LL come for. The LL had us all down. We need to move. Donovan nodded, his determination rekindling despite the pain. Lead the way. With renewed resolve, they ventured deeper into the woods, navigating the underbrush with haste but caution. The evening air was thick with tension, the quiet punctuated by the distant sounds of war gunfire echoing in the distance, a chilling reminder of the reality surrounding them. As they pressed on, Anton caught sight of a flicker of movement among the trees. Stay low, he commanded, urging them into a crouch. The sight of two figures stumbling through the foliage brought a rush of adrenaline. German soldiers, Klaus whispered, fear etched across his face. Or perhaps Americans, Anton replied, his voice steady. They huddled behind a thicket, peering through the brush as the figures emerged into the clearing. Anton strained to hear their conversation, but the words were muffled. The two soldiers appeared disheveled, their uniforms caked with mud and dirt, faces drawn with exhaustion. Did you see any sign of them? The one soldier asked, scanning the area nervously. No, but we can let this go. If that sergeant is still alive, he'll be a target, said the other, glancing around as if searching for unseen foes. A surge of panic washed over Anton. They were referring to Donovan. The thought of the American being hunted simply for surviving ignited a fire within him. We have to move. They'll surely be looking for us next, he whispered urgently. Where do we go? Klaus asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Follow the river, Donovan suggested, his voice hoarse but resolute. It'll lead us away from the front lines. We'll find shelter as the darkness sets in. Then we go, Anton declared. They crept away from the clearing, moving cautiously toward the sound of flowing water. The path was treacherous, roots and stones threatening every step, but they pressed on, hearts racing. The riverbank was a welcome sight, the moonlight reflecting off the water's surface. They followed its meandering path, the sound of the rushing current drowning out their footsteps. We need to find a place to rest, Anton said, scanning the area. There, Klaus pointed to a thick cluster of trees bordering the river. They slipped into the cover of the trees, the branches enveloping them like a protective cocoon. The world outside felt distant, the sounds of battle muted by the forest's embrace. As they settled into their makeshift hiding spot, Anton felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Are we going to make it? Klaus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We have to, Anton replied, desperation coloring his words. For ourselves and for everyone caught in this war. Donovan's breaths were labor, but his resolve had not wavered. We'll find a way to contact my men. They were searching for me. In the silence that followed, the weight of their resolve settled upon them, binding them by a shared sense of purpose. Each of them was a soldier. Each of them had a story that deserved to be told, a life that mattered beyond the battle. As the night deepened, they huddled together, shadows dancing around them. Sleep was elusive, tension coursing through their veins. But then came the sound of rustling leaves, a sudden movement in the darkness ending a shiver through Anton's spine. Fear gripped him, and he exchanged glances with Klaus and Donovan, who both sensed the same impending danger. What was that? Klaus breathed, his eyes wide with panic. Anton raised a hand, signaling for silence. The rustling grew louder, closer. The shadows coalesced into figures moving toward them. Stay quiet, he urged, heart racing in anticipation of their discovery. Figures emerged from the tree line, illuminated by the moonlight. They were soldiers, American by the looks of their uniforms, but Anton's heart sank. Would they recognize Donovan and see him as the enemy? Whereas Sergeant Donovan, one soldier called out, scanning the area. He was last seen near the bakery. Anton's heart pounded as he exchanged frantic glances with Klaus. He moved instinctively, pushing Donovan further back into the thicket, away from the approaching soldiers. We can risk it, he whispered urgently. Donovan nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. But before they could act, one of the soldiers called out again, his voice tinged with desperation. If he's not here, he could be in trouble. We have to search this area. They were trapped, caught between the desire to protect Donovan and the urgency of survival. Then came a firm voice that sliced through the tension. Stand down, we're not here to fight. Anton's heart raced as he recognized the authority in the tone. The figure stepped into the moonlight, revealing a familiar face, Lieutenant Michael Hayes, one of Donovan's comrades. Sergeant, Hayes called, his voice echoing through the trees. We were looking for you. We thought you were lost. In that instant, relief flooded through Anton, but it was quickly overshadowed by the fear of discovery. They had to make a choice, risk exposure to save Donovan or remain hidden. Stay quiet, Anton urged, ready to defend their newly forged bond. As the soldiers drew nearer, the whisper of fate hung in the air. The river flowed steadily, bearing witness to a moment that could alter the course of their lives. With a shared glance, Anton knew they had to act fast. We can't let them find Donovan, he whispered urgently to Klaus. We'll have to draw their attention away from him. Klaus glanced at Donovan, whose pain was palpable but whose spirit remained unyielding. He asked, fear edging his voice. Anton's mind raced that there was no easy answer, but instinct urged him forward. Listen, he said, taking a deep breath. I'll create a diversion. You two stay back and keep low. If I can lead them away from here, you can escape. Are you crazy? The Klaus exclaimed, his eyes wide. You'll be risking your life. I know, Anton replied, steeling his resolve. But if we want to survive, we need to make sacrifices. I can do this. He turned to Donovan, who was trying to rise but faltered against the pain. I'll be back. Donovan's eyes held a mixture of fear and gratitude. You don't have to do this for me, he protested weakly. I do, Anton said firmly, before slipping away into the shadows, his heart pounding with adrenaline. He crept toward the sounds of the approaching soldiers, careful to avoid snapping branches underfoot. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. As he neared the American soldiers, Anton observed them closely. They were scanning the area, weapons at the ready, faces tense with determination. We need to find him, the soldier named Hayes called out, urgency in his tone. Yes, are here somewhere, I know it. Anton took a deep breath and stepped into the open, his hands raised. Over here. He shouted, his voice echoing through the night. The soldiers whipped around, startled by his sudden appearance. Identify yourself, Hayes commanded, raising his firearm. I am German, Anton replied, his heart racing, but I am not your enemy. I am trying to save your sergeant. You drop your weapon, another soldier yelled, fingers tightening around his trigger. Anton felt the weight of the situation as the soldier shifted uneasily. He was surrounded, but his determination was fierce. I will, I swear. Just listen, Anton implored, taking a cautious step forward. I heard you calling for him. He is injured, and we need to get him to safety. We be hiding nearby. The tension in the air was thick, and for a fleeting moment, Anton felt the weight of uncertainty. But he pressed on, desperate to bridge the gap between enemies. He is hurt, please. We can help each other. If you really want to find him, you need to trust me. Hayes' eyes narrowed, assessing Anton as he weighed the situation. You could be a trap, he replied, voice slow and wary. Because I am fighting against the same madness that has cost us all so much, Anton replied, desperation creeping into his tone. You've lost men, I've lost friends. This war is consuming us all. Silence hung between them, the soldier's eyes flickering with doubt. Anton took another step, sensing the hesitation in Hayes. If I wanted to kill you, I would be done it already, he said, voice steady. We can let this war define our humanity. Finally, the tension broke as Hayes lowered his gun, glancing at his comrades. What do you think, boys? He asked. It was clear the soldiers were torn, battling the instincts of a soldier ingrained with distrust. Enough with the hesitation, a soldier barked. We can leave a man behind, American or not. With a reluctant nod, Hayes gestured for his squad to lower their weapons. Lead the way, he commanded, still keeping a wary eye on Anton. But if you try anything funny, we won't hesitate. Of course, Anton said, relief flooding through him. He turned quickly and began to lead them back through the underbrush, racing against the clock. Every step felt heavy with the weight of uncertainty, but he pushed on, focusing on Donovan's safety. As they neared the small clearing where they had taken refuge, Anton's heart raced. He approached cautiously, signaling to Klaus to remain hidden. The American soldiers followed closely behind, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. Where is he? Hayes demanded, his voice taut. There. Anton pointed to the thicket where Klaus had helped Donovan. The soldiers moved quickly, weapons drawn, as Anton knelt beside Klaus. "He is right here. He needs help, then." Donovan was slumped against the wall, his breathing shallow. He stepped forward, his expression shifting from suspicion to concern. He ordered, motioning to his men. "We have to get him back to camp." Klaus and Anton scrambled to support Donovan, easing him out of the thicket. The moment felt surreal. What had started as a confrontation had transformed into an alliance forged in the heat of conflict. "Stay with us, Sergeant," one of the soldiers said as they carefully laid Donovan down on the grass. "We've got you. Where are we going?" Donovan managed, his voice weak but laced with determination. "We're heading back to our lines," Hayes explained, glancing towards Anton and Klaus. "You're safe now, but we all need to move fast. The enemy won't be far behind." With Donovan's weight shared between them, Anton and Klaus pushed forward, the American soldiers providing cover as they moved through the dense woods. The sounds of battle began to fade, replaced by the urgency of their escape. Each step brought them closer to safety, but their hearts still pounded with the fear of being discovered. "Thank you," Donovan whispered, his eyes filled with gratitude as they moved. Anton met his gaze, the bond they had formed now deeper than the circumstances that had initially divided them. "You're not done yet, Sergeant. We'll see this through." As they navigated through the trees, the light began to change, casting a golden hue across the landscape. It was a new dawn, a stark reminder that the world would continue to turn, with or without the consequences of war. They emerged from the forest to a small clearing, where the remnants of a battle lay scattered around, a chilling reminder of the price of conflict. But there, in the distance, the shapes of tents came into view. The American camp was just ahead, and with each step hope flickered like a beacon. Almost there, one of the American soldiers called, urging them forward. As they drew closer, the camp erupted into activity as soldiers rushed to assist. Medical personnel met them, ready to provide aid as they approached. The sight of the camp brought a wave of relief crashing over Anton, Klaus, and Donovan. Hayes shouted, urgency weaving through his command. Donovan was lifted onto a stretcher, his comrades rallying around him, ensuring he was safe. In that moment, Anton felt the weight of their journey settle upon him. The bonds formed in the crucible of battle transcended the enmity instilled by nations. They were not just soldiers, they were humans fighting for survival, for understanding in a world painted with the colors of conflict. "Thank you," Donovan said again, looking at Anton and Klaus. "You saved my life today." "And no, we saved each other," Anton replied, a sense of unity enveloping them. "And perhaps we can do more than just survive. We can find a way to end this madness." As the sun bathed the camp in light, a new chapter began to unfold, a chapter born from shared humanity rather than division. They had faced the darkness together, and as they stood amidst the remnants of war, hope flickered anew. In the hearts of Anton, Klaus, and Donovan, a promise was forged to carry the stories of courage and compassion beyond the battlefield. For in the echoes of history, the tales of those who dared to bridge the chasm of conflict would resonate, reminding the world that even amidst the horrors of war, the human spirit could prevail. They would rise together, warriors not just of their nations, but of a shared destiny, determined to rewrite the narrative of their lives in pursuit of peace, hope, and understanding.